Why would a man want to establish paternity by performing a paternity test? The answer to this question is quite simple. Many men do not want to pay for a child that is not biologically related to himself. We can liken this to a lion's pride. If a male lion kills or beats another male lion, the winner takes over the pride and kills the offspring of the defeated lion. Now, for us humans, we're not that kind of brutal with relationships. But, most men, if they haven't grown an attachment to a child, will more times than not want to pay for a child. And this is where the problem lays here for the mother. And the mother has to tread very lightly when dealing with this particular situation. But from my lens, what I've noticed over the years, performing DNA sample collections and partaking in the paternity testing process, I've noticed that a lot of men are fearful, and I noticed that a lot of women, not all, but a lot of them, are fearful of being found out. So they're the keeper of secrets. And this is an interesting dynamic because a lot of children are being born this way. So the reason why a man would want to establish paternity is, first and foremost, he wants to know whether or not the child is biologically related to himself. And that's very important. And any woman, in my opinion, who can't understand that importance of that bond for the father is doing the child a big disservice, in my opinion. Another thing, or another reason I should say, why a man would want to perform a paternity test is for the health of the child. Unfortunately, today, fathers are perceived as not wanting to be in the child's life, and we are kind of, and when I say we, I'm talking about society, has kind of supported this narrative that men don't want to be around their children or be involved in a child's life. And I haven't found that to be true. More times than not, most men, if you're talking about out of 10 men, 7 out of those 10 men want to be involved in the child's life, but due to circumstance, for whatever the reason may be, the fathers are having a challenging time. Either the courts are hindering something, or the mother is doing, the mother's working in conjunction with the courts, but she'll, depending on whatever the situation that occurred, she's going to try to keep the father, the biological father, away from the child. And it affects the establishment of the paternity and the growth of the child. Even if the child's mother says, well, I want to deal with someone else who's much more financially stable. Well, what happens is the child who is not being raised by his biological oftentimes doesn't understand who he or she fully is and the contribution of her biological father. And this is a problem that we've had for a very long time. This is not something that's brand new, but for a very long time we've had this problem. And then it goes into the courtroom, and in the courtroom, what ends up happening? The judge says, let's operate under the best interest of the child, but very seldom do we hear a judge say, well, let's look in the best interest of the child and make sure that this father is biologically related to this child. Because you see, if you're married and a child is conceived in a marriage, it's automatically assumed it's the husband. But if the wife deals with someone else and the child's not biologically related to her husband, then what? And this kind of blanket law that's on the books, in my opinion, has contributed to the types of children being bred today. And I believe that performing a DNA test will alleviate a lot of the issues of knowing who the biological father is, which is very important. That should be the first and foremost thing on the table, because if the child, for whatever reason, needs a blood transfusion or a bone marrow transplant, guess what? If the biological father's not around, then the child might be in jeopardy. Or even if there's like a rare disease or something that the doctors may not know, but maybe the father is aware of, and he's been maintaining, how would the child know? So we just can't look at it as a financial thing. So this is the importance that many men are starting to come into that realization in wanting to establish paternity. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some men that just don't want to establish paternity, but we will deal with that in another post. But the reason why men want to establish paternity is, number one, to make sure that the child is biologically related to them, so he can continue to try to strengthen the bond between himself and the child. And another reason why a man would want to establish paternity by ways of a DNA test is also for the best interest of the child, not only for the child's mental health in terms of understanding where he or she comes from, but also the other aspect, the physical, the genetic aspect of the child will also, or could also, be at stake. And I think once you establish the paternity of the father biologically, once you find out the truth about that, I think then all of the other things should play a factor. It shouldn't be vice versa, where you just look at the finances and all of that stuff, and then, you know, you come with, and I'm having a brain freeze here, so please forgive me. The paternity establishment, or doing the DNA test. The DNA test should be on the forefront as opposed to the financial stuff and all the other points that come along in paternity acknowledgement cases. But nonetheless, I want to thank you for taking a few moments out. I'm going to be putting these posts out every now and again in regards to the paternity testing process, which will cover not only just doing and performing a paternity test. I want to be able to answer the questions most people have about paternity, but I also will address, child support as it pertains to paternity testing. We're going to deal with in vitro. We're going to deal with immigration. We're going to deal with a plethora of different topics that are not covered a lot online, that many people are curious about, that want to know about the paternity testing process. So I'm hopeful this opens the eyes of some men who are not aware that they're putting children that they could potentially conceive, if they don't push and fight hard for trying to at least know, not for only yourself to alleviate that confusion in your own self, but helping the child out. I think that would do wonders if it can be done. I know sometimes certain mothers make it very difficult, but we're going to also address that. So just subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon button, and until next time, because the post won't be scheduled, when I release these posts. So if you just subscribe, you'll be able to get a notification, and then we can move forward from there. So until next time, I appreciate you all. Take care and have a great